Now, Mayhem Shorts are back, just for a day, maybe. I have something something really interesting to read out to you there. And maybe you connect the dots or not. Just, see what happens. The thing I want to talk to you about today is the Rockefeller Lockstep program that was released in 2010. They hypothesized a stimulated global outbreak required steps, various phases, overall timelines, and expected outcomes. This was presented in the Rockefeller Lockstep in 2010. So, number one, create a very contagious but super low mortality rate virus to fit the needed plan. Using SARS HIV hybrid research strain created at 43 Class 4 lab from 2008 to 2013 as part of the research project to find out why coronaviruses spread like wildfire in bats but have an extremely hard time infecting humans. To counteract that, they added 4 HIV inserts into the virus. The missing key into the infect the human is the ACE2 receptor. Create a weaponized version of the virus with a much higher mortality rate as a backup plan, ready to be released in phase 3 but only if needed. SARS, HIV, MERS, weaponized tribrid strain created at 43 Class 4 lab in 2015. Transport the research strain to different Class 4 labs, the National Microbiology Lab in Winnipeg, Canada, and have it stolen and smuggled out by China, the Yangli, on purpose, and taken to China's only Class 4, which is Wuhan Institute of Virology in Wuhan, China, for added plausible deniability and help cement the wanted backup public script as something to fall back on if needed. The primary script being its natural, backup script being that China created and it released it by accident. Fund all the talking heads, Fauci, Birx, Tedros, an agency, WHO, NIAID, the CDC, and also the UN that will be involved in pandemic response prior to the planned release of the research strain to control the wanted script throughout the operation. Create and fund the vaccination development and roll out plans so it's capable of being rolled out on a global scale. Gates. A decade of vaccines and the Global Vaccine Action Plan from 2010 to 2020. He did that, didn't he? Create and fund vaccination verification and certification protocols, digital ID to confirm the vaccination program after the mandatory rollout is enacted. Program Gates, ID 2020. Simulate Lockstep hypothesis just prior to the planned research strain release, using a real war exercise as a final war game to determine expected response, timelines, and outcomes. Event 201 in October 2019. Release the research strain at the Wuhan Institute of Virology itself and then blame its release on the natural scapegoat as the wanted primary script. Wuhan Market, there you go, November 2019. So exactly everything is as simulation is being played. Downplay the human-to-human transmission for as long as possible to allow the research strain to spread on a global scale before any country can lock down to respond to avoid initial infection. Once a country has seen infection in place, lock down incoming outgoing travel, keep the transmission while the country spreading as long as possible. Once enough people in a country or region are infected, enact forced quarantines, isolation to that area, and expand the lockdown region slowly over time. So that's what happened in Ireland. Everybody was asking the questions. If something's coming in, why don't you just lock everything off just for a couple of weeks, month? We'd survive, with loads of potatoes and cows. But on that note, what happened there, they didn't. They just let everything going in. So they were on it, probably, allegedly, they're on it since the beginning. Overhyped mortality rate, but trying the research strain to death, they have little to nothing to do with the actual virus. We have the recent CDC responses that, how is it, 30% or even more were only deaths that were caused by COVID. Well, we'll see. To keep the fear and compliance at the maximum. The people in Ireland were scared to death. They're probably still scared to death. Look at the teachers, look at the kids in the classrooms with the temperatures sometimes below 6 degrees. If anyone dies for any other reason and is found to have COVID, consider it COVID death. And if anyone is thought of maybe had symptoms of COVID, assume they had COVID and consider that as COVID death. Oh my God. Keep the public quarantines for as long as possible to destroy the region's economy, create civil unrest, break down the supply chain, and cause the start of mass food shortages, as well as cause people's immune systems to weaken due to lack of interaction with other people's bacteria. That's what's happening. Our immune systems are shattered. Unless you spend loads of time outside and keep interacting with someone you know to keep that bacteria flowing between each other, we're just going to be a dead people. Well, the outside wall, and that's going to keep our immune systems alert and active. Downplay and attack any potential treatments and continue to echo that the only cure that's viable to fight is the virus and the vaccine. Continue to drag out the quarantine over and over again in 2 weeks intervals. There's that 2 week spell casting again, and that's a CIA program, causing more and more people to eventually stand up and protest, defy them. So we're seeing people on Twitter being blocked, accounts being suspended, there's no debate on the telly, nothing going on at the moment. So it's just only one stream of information, which is called propaganda. Eventually end phase 1 quarantine once they get enough public pushback expected June 2020. And publicly state they think it's too early to end the isolation, but I'm going to do it anyways. Just if you're listening in the other country, just have a quick think about it. What's happened so far? Once the public go back to normal, wait a few weeks and continue overhype the research strain mortality rate. But the research strain, we know COVID. August to September 2020 and combine it with the increase in deaths due to people dying from standard illness at the higher rate than normal due to having highly weakened immune systems from months of being in isolation, which is back up said, you should social distance people who wear masks regularly. So you get your vaccine and you are told to wear your mask. That's what they just told you. They have highly weakened immune system and they help further path the mortality rate and also hype the coming phase 2 lockdown. Eventually enact the phase 2 quarantines. So October through November 2020, and even more extreme label and blame the protesters, mostly people who don't trust their governments already, as the cause of the largest second wave, whereby the media will say, we told you so. So an unvaccinated and the people that were against vaccines or were vaccinated and didn't want to get the booster, they were shunned on social media and in real life. So that's what happens. We don't have access to anything. Boom. It's working, isn't it? Enforce the phase 2 quarantines at much more extreme level, increasing the penalty of the fines. Replace fines with jail time. We already have fines. We already have fines that if you don't get your vax in some countries, you're going to be fined over €100. Deem all travel as non-essential. Increase checkpoints, including military assistance. We've only seen police and Gardaí. No, we haven't seen Gardaí in that stage yet, but we've only seen police in other countries stopping protesters and the other people that are trying to speak up. Take over control of food, gas, and create large-scale shortages so that people can only get access to essential products or services if they are first given permission. Some places you can only access the grocery shop if you have your digital ID. Keep the phase 2 lockdown in place for a much longer period of time than the phase 1 lockdown, continuing to destroy the global economy, further degrade the supply chain, and further amplify the food shortages and the like. Quell on public outrage using extreme actions or force and make anyone who defies them appear as public enemy number one, to those who are willing to submit. After a rather long phase 2 lockdown of 6 months plus, roll out the vaccination program and the vaccine certification and make it mandatory for everyone. So we actually spread in time a bit, given priority access to those that submitted from the start and have those that are for attack those that are against it. Pat Kenny. There you go. Just by the book, play by the book. Saying they are a threat and the cause of all the problems by using words like, we can't go back to normal until everyone takes the vaccine. And people define them are hurting our way out of life and therefore are the enemy. In other words, they're going to turn people against each other. That's what they've already done. If the majority of people go along with the agenda, they'll let those people enter the new system, the new normal, while limiting the minority that defy the agenda's ability to work, travel and live. If the majority of people go against the agenda, then release the weaponized... Shit, that's scary. Then they release the weaponized SARS, HIV, MERS, Drybit strain as a phase 3 operation. A virus with the 30+% of mortality rate as a final scare to punish the minority, to quickly become the majority and give the final "we told you so" to those that didn't listen. So all the unvaccinated here at the moment, if that's happening, I don't even want to think about it. Enact the new economy model. A cryptocurrency system using body activity data which is based on human behavior and willingness to submit. It is tweaked version of Black Mirror's 15 million merit programs using food, water, shelter and other essentials as a weapon of enforcement of the new economic system. Basically, do what we want and get rewarded. Gain credit score and gain more access to things you need to survive, or go against what we want and get penalized. Lose credit score and lose access to things you need to survive. So, that's excerpt from Thomas Williams' THI Special Exposé Part 2. Funny things are happening, US Today News did the fact-checking on this. So, our rating, false. That's what they're saying. We rate these claims as false based on our research. The Rockefeller Playbook and Operation Lockstep do not exist. The claim borrows scenarios from Lockstep, a section of scenarios for the future of technology and international development, a report published by the Rockefeller Foundation. The report makes no reference to COVID-19. Well, you don't have to call it COVID-19, a vaccine against the disease, or plans to introduce a police state during a pandemic. But all the actions that have been taken so far by the government lead to that, don't they? So that's just... I'm going to be fact-checked anyway, but I just read out the transcript from the internet, what we can only find really important stuff on mainstream media, don't we? But there is a document from Rockefeller Foundation 2010 scenarios. You can view it online, and there is on page 18. It's Lockstep, and we just read. We can read a word of tighter top-down government control and more authoritarian leadership with limited innovation and growing citizen pushback. So, okay, that's they're talking about the 2012, the pandemic that the world has been anticipating for years finally hit, and okay, and they're just basically going through the same stuff, explaining what the other countries did. And it started around 2012. Okay, we have time. In 2012, the pandemic that the world had been anticipating for years finally hit. Unlike 2009's H1N1, this new influenza strain originated from wild geese, was extremely virulent and deadly. Even the most pandemic-prepared nations were quickly overwhelmed when the virus struck around the world. So we have 2012, and then we'll have 2019 as a start point from this one. The pandemic blanked the planet. Disproportionate numbers died in Africa, Southeast Asia and Central America, where the virus spread like a wildfire in the absence of official containment protocols. But even in developed countries, containment was a challenge. The United States' initial policy of strongly discouraging citizens from flying proved deadly in its leniency. Okay. However, a few countries did fare better, China in particular. So China's quick imposition on enforcement of mandatory quarantine for all citizens, as well as instant and near hermetic sealing off of all borders, saved millions of lives, stopping the spread of the virus. They took the extreme measures. During the pandemic, national leaders around the world flexed their authority and imposed tight rules and restrictions, from the mandatory wearing of face masks to body temperature checks at the entries to communal spaces like train stations and supermarkets. Even the pandemic faded, there's more authoritarian control and oversight of citizens and their activities stuck even intensified in order to protect themselves from the spread of increasingly global problems, from pandemics to transitional terrorism. So what happens here in this scenario, they're sniffing out the opportunity that by the thing that they're doing, they can increase the power, they can increase the control, which is going to become authoritarian. Okay. Well, it's all there. It's all there. So we had a transcript from one possible outcomes, and all the scenarios and work, and Lockstep scenario. So basically, the headlines in Lockstep. First one is quarantine restricts in-person contact, cellular networks overloaded, intercontinental trade hit by strict pathogen controls. That's 5 years later. Italy addresses immigrant caregiver gap with robots. 2017. Well, they were a little bit ahead of themselves. Well, Africa's embrace and authoritarian capitalism a la China continue. So they went and they wrote a scenario that one of the African countries or the whole African continent is going to embrace the authoritarian capitalism a la China. So they're going to basically get in and just do it, the social credit system. So they have a plan for everything, and why not just go by the plan? But we all crazy and we don't know what's going on. Man. Right, I'll be back next year probably.